Is everybody ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. The time is now 5 o'clock on June 3rd, 2024, and the Community Development Committee meeting is called to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Hayes.
Present.
Alderman Newsom.
Present.
Alderman Florian.
Present.
Alderman Donenworth.
Present.
Alderman Turner.
Present.
Thank you. Agenda item C and opening items. May I please have a motion and a second for approval of the meeting minutes from the May 6th, 2024 committee meeting?
So moved.
Second.
First by Alderwoman Newsom, second by Alderman Donenworth. Are there any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next up is audience time. So if there is anybody in the audience that would like to address the Community Development Committee meeting about anything that is on today's agenda, you're welcome to do so. You'll have a 3-minute time limit. And I believe we have a number of people here that want to address the committee. If you don't mind, if you could just print your name on the piece of paper that's up there, just so we can keep a record of everybody who came to speak. But at the same time, please also state your name for the record. And since we don't have names in advance, I would just encourage everyone to maybe form a single file line along the window. Yep. There you go.
My name is Rose Peck. I live right now in Grays Lake, Illinois. I've been a PADS volunteer. Actually, your town started us out. Christmas Eve of 1987 was the first overnight shelter, and it was right here in Waukegan. I was told about the program that fall, and in 1988, January, I started volunteering in Lindenhurst with PADS. I've been a PADS volunteer ever since. I had not planned to speak tonight, but I do want to, first of all, commend Waukegan for taking that first step and say that this step now is a fantastic move in the right direction if it's approved. When I started out, the men were mostly men that came to the shelter site. They had to walk from Waukegan to Lindenhurst to Antioch to all the different places. They had no time to do anything except walk and find a place to sleep. They hunted for food. We started, the church sites did a lot. PADS gradually offered the bus program. So they brought buses in, and the guests were bused. They provided address and phone number services so people could get jobs because they had a place to get to give businesses and put their applications in for. Let's see. The kids who came to the site would have to go to the 1800 first to be bused to our site. They'd have to then sleep on the floor with other guests of all different ages. They'd have to get up at 5 in the morning, catch a bus at 6 to come back to Waukegan, then catch a bus, wait there to catch the bus to school. Now that they're in the motels, it's a better step. They're now getting more services, better services, because they can get the help right away. Now, a fixed site will even make that better. That's a great step in the right direction because now, because if they're in a fixed site, the services can be provided right there with the guests required to have the services that will help them improve whatever their areas they need and move forward. So I strongly, like I say, I didn't plan to speak, but I just had to tell you that how much, first of all, I appreciate the support that we've had in the past and really look forward to this and hopefully the support we'll get tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I'm going to read just so I can make sure I get everything I needed to say. Good evening, esteemed members of the Waukegan City Council. My name is Rachel Chenier, and I proudly represent the Family First Center of Lake County, a nonprofit organization committed to supporting families in our community. Tonight, I come before you to advocate passionately for the fixed shelter site proposal that holds immense significance for the children and families of our city. As a partner of PADS Lake County, we currently offer our after-school programming at the hotel shelter in Waukegan and the one in Mundelein. So we're there once a week from 3 to 6, playing with the kids, feeding them, doing counseling and trauma-informed care. Through this work, I have had the privilege of witnessing the remarkable resilience and strength of the families we serve. The children and families at the shelter are not just faces in a crowd. They are individuals with dreams, hopes, and a deep desire for stability. When they step into the PADS center, or when they will step into the PADS center to access essential items like clothing, shoes, and household goods, they are not just receiving material possessions. They are being embraced by a community that provides them with a sense of dignity and belonging. Passing this ordinance is not merely about approving a shelter. It's about fundamentally transforming the future of every child and family in this community. By establishing the fixed shelter site, we are offering more than just a roof over their heads. We are providing a foundation of permanency and security that is essential for our neighbors experiencing homelessness. Many of our community members are currently living in temporary conditions in hotels, facing uncertainty and instability on a daily basis. By implementing a structured shelter, we can alter the trajectory of their lives, offering them the chance to rebuild, thrive, and contribute meaningfully to society. This fixed shelter site proposal transcends a mere physical structure. It symbolizes a beacon of hope, a promise of a better tomorrow for those who need it most. By approving this ordinance, we are not just addressing immediate needs, but we are creating pathways to a brighter and more secure future for all. I implore you to consider the profound impact that this fixed shelter site can have on our community's most vulnerable members. Let us stand together in solidarity, recognizing that our actions today have the power to shape a more compassionate and inclusive tomorrow for every child and family in Waukegan. Thank you to the council for your attention and consideration.
Can I give this to you for? Well, good evening. My name is Pastor Ben Squires, pastor at Bethel Lutheran Church in Gurnee, and here also to support the PADS proposal, and really glad to be handing out to you a packet of letters of support from 11 churches in Lake County, along with Islamic Foundation North, and because we believe this is our shared Lake County. And it was a huge blessing for many years that the churches stepped in to help those experiencing homelessness, but I look back on that and think that was probably always meant to be a stopgap measure. It was a way of helping people be safe, but not a permanent solution, and unfortunately it just kind of kept going that way. This is a huge opportunity to move beyond that. And yet, when I say I'm excited about the fixed site shelter locations, that does not mean that the partnership with the churches ends. And so these letters pledge support from these churches, and we're in contact with many other churches that are support for PADS, for the work they do, for their guests, for the programming, and for our communities. That pledge continues because this is our shared Lake County. A few of you, I don't know, may remember that back in 2018, I was advocating for some of the things that PADS needed at that time at $1,800 and I did an art project where I did a prayer walk from our church on Grand downtown here and back, taking close-up photos of trash and beautiful things along the way, and you couldn't tell because they were close-up photos. You could never tell where those things were. Was the beer bottle in Gurnee or Waukegan? Were the flowers in Waukegan or Gurnee? You can't tell. And the point was, it's our shared Lake County, it's our shared Grand Avenue, it's our shared community, and those experiencing homelessness are not just a Waukegan problem, and even if you said no, it isn't going to go away. We need to work together. So I urge you to support this change, and the ordinance needed to change. And I wanted to also say that this is also in light of knowing that we are very supportive of the process for a Gurnee site that also is moving forward. So we're excited about how these are all going to work together. And just to read into the record, the 11 churches are Bethel Lutheran in Gurnee, Christ Church Lake Forest, Christian Neighbors Waukegan, Cross Life Libertyville, Gurnee Community Church, Joy Lutheran Gurnee, Lakeland Gurnee, Love Inc. Lake County, St. Paul's Waukegan, Street Chaplains, Waukegan Baptist Bible, and as I
Thank
said,
you, sir.
Islamic Foundation North.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. My name is Rose Froseth. My spouse and I are members of Joy Lutheran Church in Gurnee, and we, along with our pastor and our congregation, have been longtime supporters of PADS. Our pastor, Mark Borghetti, apologized that he could not attend this meeting tonight, but he had prior commitments. But he sent a letter in support of the fixed shelters that I'm going to read on his behalf. My name is Mark Borghetti, lead pastor of Joy Lutheran Church in Gurnee. I've been a pastor for nearly 20 years, and during this time, both congregations I have served have been actively involved with PADS, supporting those among us who lack a permanent address. In my previous Naperville congregation, the PADS organization purchased an apartment complex 3 blocks from our church in a residential neighborhood. To the best of my knowledge, they were good neighbors, and this fixed shelter site greatly helped our community. One of the most poignant and lasting insights I gained from serving people who live among us homeless is this: every act of compassion must maintain or restore the dignity of the recipient. Dignity is the inherent worth and respect every person possesses simply by being human. It acknowledges our value and individuality, promoting self-esteem and mutual respect. Every person deserves dignity because it affirms our shared humanity, fosters compassion, and ensures a just and equitable society where everyone is treated with honor and respect. I believe this to my core. And one of the best ways to restore or maintain someone's dignity is to help them find a place to live. A place to live that includes simple necessities we often take for granted: electricity, clean running water, a toilet, a way to have a hot meal, a roof and walls to shelter from the elements, and perhaps most importantly, a room of their own to sleep in. I support PADS moving forward with their fixed shelter site plans because as a community, we will be maintaining or restoring the dignity of the people who live there by helping them to move quickly, to more quickly and more effectively get into permanent housing. When asked about the greatest commandment, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." And then he added, and the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. When we work to promote housing for those who lack it, we are living out the second part of the greatest commandment ever given. May we all find ourselves loving others the same way we want to be loved, with the gift of dignity. Grace and peace, Pastor Mark. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Mark Rowlandhagen. I'm the pastor of St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Waukegan and a resident of Waukegan, as are many of my parishioners. St. Paul's is very active in providing for basic needs for people in this community. You're probably aware of our clothing distribution, monthly clothing distribution that the city helps promote, actually, too. And we're involved in that, and we do it in a manner that is store-like and respectful to people. I think what the Tribune wrote about it and said it looks like a store except for there's no cash register. So we are very involved in trying to meet the basic needs of people, including we also help assemble meals that are distributed every week through the Roberti Community House on 8th Street. And we are a neighbor of PADS just around the corner on Lewis Avenue. And St. Paul's has always been a strong supporter of PADS and at one time was a host site for PADS. And because of our location, we sometimes have people who are being helped by PADS who join our worship community for usually short periods of time. And sometimes we have people who find shelter in frankly, in our bushes and around our building. This afternoon, before I came over, there was a gentleman taking a nap in the grass behind our dumpster. I'm here because to let you know that St. Paul's as a community strongly supports PAD's plan to create permanent fixed site shelter for families on Lewis Avenue. And as I'm certain you're all aware, just recently there was that point in time survey done. It was done in January that showed like a 50% increase in homelessness in Lake County compared to the previous year. So the need is very much there. And this proposed fixed site shelter for families and children at that site on Lewis Avenue would be a major step forward in providing much-needed shelter in a dignified and compassionate and supportive way. So thank you for listening, and I urge your support of this project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Community Development Committee members. My name is Rick Riddle, and I'm a member of St. Paul's Lutheran Church as a council member, and I'm also, as you know, an elected member of the Waukegan School District 60 Board. All of us are aware of the homelessness crisis that's facing our nation and has been in recent years, and the different attempts by communities to address those serious issues. Over the past several decades, local churches such as St. Paul's and many of the churches that spoke today have been involved by opening their facilities as overnight housing for PAD's clients or offering evening community meals. This has been only a temporary stopgap measure, and not a very effective one at that, as individuals and families still had to leave these facilities and find shelter in libraries, train stations, other public or private places. Counseling and treatment for individual needs was usually not available. Currently, I understand that Lake County has approximately 500 people in temporary shelters, half of whom are children. Being on the school board, I am acutely aware of the many problems and issues faced by children who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. That is why I fully support the PAD's proposed site shelter located at 3633 North Lewis in Waukegan. Fixed sites will provide much better long-term outcomes than temporary shelters for both individuals and especially for children. Both the proposed Waukegan and Gurnee sites will have wraparound services, which will include mental health, job counseling, library, family support services, life skills, and substance abuse treatment. I urge the committee and the City Council to vote to approve the PAD's proposal as presented, and specifically tonight items 5B and C. Thank you very much.
My name is John Fallon. I live in the 3rd Ward. Sometimes I'm a sound person for some aldermen. I live about 3 blocks from the PAD shelter. They're pretty boring neighbors, actually, nowadays. And I would be very much in favor of this hotel. I have been in the field for 40 years. The last job that I had, I'm now retired. Our second to last job was working in Evanston, where there was a fire in a large building, and we had to bring meals, and we cooperated with PADS in Evanston, actually called Connections there. And I was there when the shelter was first formed in Evanston. And we had to get meals, so we had people staying in the hotels, and I'm proud to say that some of the leadership for PADS is part of Connections in Evanston, where the meals that we got were at the Margarita Inn, which Evanston gave up as a hotel to then become the permanent connection site there. And it's been a good neighbor. It's much more densely packed than where we're talking about now on Sheridan Road. I also housed people in all those hotels up on Sheridan from other places, and so you need to know that individuals are there. It's good to have an organization who's going to support people there, and this is a model that's being used all across the country as a result of the pandemic and increasing numbers of people who are newly homeless as well as chronically homeless. So I think it's a really good idea. It will guarantee that that hotel will be in better shape than it is now and will be occupied almost all the time. generally any place that has permanent supportive housing or transitional housing has an occupancy rate of 97% is usually what we found when I did financing for the Corporation for Supportive Housing. So it's a really good move for the city in terms of stabilizing that particular property. Every property I've ever been involved in that works with this kind of thing, the neighbors are always terrified of it initially, and then they don't remember ever having opposed it. And we have multiple sites in Waukegan now where people with difficulties are living, and you don't know it other than the city never finds them because they're properties that are well taken care of, and this one will be too. Thank you.
For the folks who just spoke, if you didn't write your name on the sheet, if you would, please. Some folks weren't here when that was announced at the beginning. Sorry, Chairman. Just wanted to jump in before people got too far.
Hello, my name is Richard Berg. I've been a PADS volunteer at the Grays Lake UPC for about 10 years. And I've seen firsthand the individuals that are in this situation. And it's tough when you're being bussed here and there and everywhere, every night a different church, especially for families. It's got to be brutal because these kids are trying to get into a church and have a meal and try to study, and it's brutal. Having a permanent spot for these families and individuals to go will help in so many ways and help get them out of their situation much faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Last chance for anybody that would like to address the committee about anything on the agenda. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. There being no old business, we'll move on to new business. Can I have a motion and a second for agenda item 5A?
So moved.
Second.
First by Alderwoman Florian. Yes, I know. Dr. Florian, thank you. Second by Alderman Donaldworth. Agenda item 5A is an ordinance granting an extension of a conditional use permit at 2082 North Buttrick Street for a solar photovoltaic, something like that, voltaic, thank you, field and associated variances approved under ordinances 23-0-206, 207, and 23-0-208, zoning calendars number 2716, 2717, and 2718. Are there any questions to the motion? There being no questions, roll call, please.
Alderman Turner?
It's in the 6th Ward. I'm happy to vote for it enthusiastically. Thank you. Aye.
Alderman Donenworth?
Aye.
Alderman Florian?
Aye.
Alderman Newsome?
Aye.
Chairman Hayes?
Aye. Can I have a first and a second for agenda item 5B?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, first by Alderwoman Florian, second by Alderman Turner. Agenda item 5B is an ordinance approving zoning calendar number 2747, granting a map amendment rezone from B2 Community Shopping District to OI-2 Office/Institutional District at 3633 North Lewis Avenue. Are there any questions to the motion?
I have a question, sir.
Alderman Turner?
Thank you. Will there be like on-site maintenance personnel to ensure that the grass is cut, the parking lot is kept clean and so forth? Or is that going to be contracted out? How's that going to be handled?
Sir, if you could state your name for the record.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Alan Sewell, Executive Director, PADS Lake County. How are you, Alderman? We have contracted Riverside Management to manage those locations. So they'll cut the grass and all the maintenance associated with the property itself.
And I just want to caution about allowing folks to gather in the parking lot. I understand the facility is going to be secure and not a lot of traffic in and out, but we don't want it to turn into somewhere where people gather in the parking lot either. So I'm sure you're aware of that, but I just want to make the comment.
Definitely. The shelter that we are proposing is not like anything that we've ever seen. It will be a closed system, and it's unlike the processing center at 1,800 Grand. 1,800 Grand is where most of the county descends upon paths for services, so that includes hospitals who discharge individuals, police who bring them out, just residents who need help. But this would definitely be a closed system, and clients will go through a processing process first before they actually enter the shelter as a resident.
Outstanding. You have my vote. Congratulations.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, Alderman.
I'm not on the committee, but I don't see the agenda on any of these.
So there's actually two items on the community development agenda. The first one that was just called was the rezoning of the property from, this is zoning calendar 2747, granting a map amendment for this property at 3633 North Lewis Avenue, from the B2 Community Shopping District to the OI2 District. So it's B2 on community development. You're looking at government oversight and operations, possibly?
Does somebody have an extra sheet or that I'm missing or something? I don't have.
Yeah, I can give you a copy of the
It's on board docs, Alderman.
here.
I saw it on board docs, but when I came here, it wasn't there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So just to clarify, what was called was just the rezoning. However, this does impact the pad center.
No other questions? Roll call, please.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Donenworth,
Aye.
Alderman Florian,
Aye.
Alderman Newsome,
Aye.
Chairman Hayes.
Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a first and a second for agenda item 5C?
So
I'll make the
moved.
motion.
A first by Alderman Turner, a second by Alderwoman Florian. Agenda item 5C is an ordinance approving zoning calendars number 2748 and 2749, granting a conditional use permit and associated variances for a homeless shelter at 3633 North Lewis Avenue. Are there any questions to the motion? Alderwoman Florian.
Yes, I have an email from a resident that I had just a few questions I wanted to bring up on her behalf. So one of the points she makes is that she believes part of the problem with homelessness is a vast problem. We know that, right? Multi-layered. She's claiming that a big part of the problem is public housing, and people are removed from public housing and become homeless. Do you have any numbers about around that? Like, are half the people you see from public housing, a quarter? I mean, just an estimate.
That's not a data point that we currently track. But I think that is something that we could find. We do partner with the Lake County Housing Authority and the Waukegan Housing Authority, and we could get that information. There has been an increase in rent prices in the area, and there's been the largest increase in food prices in the last 40 years that we've ever seen. Some places are even 70% increase in prices. And so what happens is there are families that may struggle with whether or not to pay their rent as opposed to eat that night. And so it could be possible that people are becoming evicted in that way. Eviction rates have increased, but I can't necessarily say that it is due to specifically public housing situations.
And then she's concerned about the alarms on the exits, and that's a fire department requirement, correct? Like the exits have to be alarmed so that you know.
Yes, so could you mention what the concern is so I can answer it?
Well, she feels like they're being held against their will because there's an alarm on the exit.
Well, the alarm is to not only keep residents safe, but then also to alert our staff and personnel who would be throughout the building. You know, we also deal with regular human behavior where it could be the case that someone may be interested in sneaking a guest in, and we want to develop a structure that drastically decreases the potential of that. And so the alarm system is one, and it's unique to any other, you know, residential facility where should those doors be locked and you try to exit, there will be a delay based on the time in your exit, and an alarm will sound so that we are all aware that a door that should not be opened is being opened. And so we want to just take our precautions and do that. This is Sandy, our construction consultant. He can speak.
Sandy Stevenson, I just wanted to clarify that it is not a fire department requirement. This is not a prison. It is purely for the security monitoring by the pad staff that someone would be leaving when maybe they shouldn't, or allowing somebody to enter a back door.
But to be clear, the people that stay there are there voluntarily. They can, if they decide they don't want to stay anymore, they can leave.
It is definitely illegal to hold anyone against their own will. And while sometimes we want to, you know, there are clients that we wish, you know, would stay in shelter. People have the right to make their own choices, and we hope that this program allows them to become the architects of their own future.
I just have two more questions. So, and then they were referencing earlier the wraparound services, and that is also a voluntary program. Like obviously, if you don't have a drug problem, you don't have to go to drug counseling, right?
Right. The program, the services that we offer are tailored specifically to the household. If that was the case, and by the way, we don't see the national average of homeless individuals with drug problems or substance use issues is around 32%. PADS currently, the numbers that we just pulled, we're at about 6%, and our families are much lower than that. But however, that's a side note. If every household gets its own customized service plan, and should that include that, then yes, you would be required to participate in that. But everyone definitely has to participate in pursuing housing. And so that is a condition of the shelter, and then also a condition of the shelter is pursuing employment. We want to make sure that anyone that comes into our shelter is transformed by the program and then exits on the other side, contributing member to society.
Excellent. So one last question is about the school buses. I know when you and I met, one of my concerns was, is this going to be a huge impact on the local school district where the hotel is? And you explained to me that the children go to the school they originally came from, which means there may be 40 buses coming there every day. I mean, I don't know, so my question is, you only have one way in and one way out. Is there room enough for a school bus to come in and turn around and go back out, or how is that going to look?
He'll answer the structural component of it, and then I'll answer the programmatic.
Why don't you answer the programmatic first, because that really answers the questions that we don't have 40 school buses coming.
Yeah, we won't have it. So there's something called the McKinney-Vento Act, and that act allows for our families to, because homelessness is so disruptive, it allows for some normalcy for children who are in school. And so they get transported to whatever school that they became homeless at. And so that would normally involve maybe a taxi or an Uber, but that's not necessarily provided by PADS. It's a part of, it's just law, basically.
Right, so there's not going to be huge school buses trying to turn around in your parking lot, is my point.
There will not be huge school buses trying to turn around in our parking lot.
And Alderman, the larger answer is that we have one entrance in and out as the existing hotel does. We're not changing that. We have met with the fire department. There's access for fire trucks and so forth, which are as large as or larger than school buses.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I want to say thank you for your presentation. I used to be an employee of PAD, so I definitely believe in the objective and what you're doing. You're desperately needed. And I want to direct this question to you. You presented a PowerPoint indicating the different dynamics of homelessness, employment, and housing. Is there any way we can get a copy of that in your last presentation?
I've done so many presentations. I can.
I believe.
Are you
Alderman
talking about the one at the
interagency
Yes, that we
intergovernmental?
attended,
I
yes.
emailed that to you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And we have other data that we've used over time. I can put together more information and share with you guys as needed.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Donenworth,
Aye.
Alderman Florian,
Aye.
Alderman Newsome.
Aye.
Chairman Hayes.
Aye. Agenda item 5D, can I have a motion and a second? Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
wanted to make, since there are a lot of people from the supporters here tonight, this item will be on the City Council's agenda for final approval in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Council. Can I have a motion and a second for agenda item 5D?
Motion.
Second.
First by Alderman Donilworth, second by Alderman Turner. Agenda item 5D is an ordinance creating a Class E restaurant liquor license and associated video gaming license for Lucky Scotty located at 30 North Genesee Street. Are there any questions to the motion?
I do have a question, but I got to look it up here. I'm so sorry.
Is anybody here on behalf of the applicant? Okay. I think the question's going to be for you, so why don't you come on up?
Good evening, all Community Development Committee members.
Okay, give us just 1 second.
Yep.
Thanks. While Alderwoman Florian's looking for her question. Okay, I do have one question for you, though. I believe I saw a female name on the application.
That would be my spouse.
Okay, all right. So I'm just trying to figure out, obviously, you're married, but are you going to be involved with the business as well?
I'm going to be manager of operations. She's more of a shy person, so I guess I'm going to be the one.
He's the one that's going to be running it and doing all of it, so.
Okay. There was just one name on the application, though, right?
That would be only
Okay.
correct.
Seeing as you're shy, I'm not going to drag you up here and ask you a bunch of questions. Yeah, no problem. All right, I believe Alderwoman Florian's going to have some questions, but we might take it up at the regular city council meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any questions, any other questions from the alderman? No. All right, roll call, please.
We're okay to sit down?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Donenworth,
Aye.
Alderman Florian,
Aye.
Alderman Newsome.
Nay.
Chairman Hayes.
Aye. Motion passes. Can I have a motion and a second for agenda item 5E?
Motion.
Second.
First by Alderman Turner, second by Alderman Donilworth. Agenda item 5E is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Transit Authority, RTA, for the Access to Transit Grant Award. Are there any questions to the motion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Turner,
Aye.
Alderman Donenworth,
Aye.
Alderman Florian,
Aye.
Alderman Newsome.
Aye.
Chairman Hayes.
Aye, motion passes. Can I have a motion and a second for agenda item 5F?
So move.
Second.
First by Alderwoman Newsome, second by Alderman Turner. 5F is a resolution approving a contract with Five Star Energy Services, LLC, for the fiscal year 25 SRF-funded lead service line replacements in an amount not to exceed $3,689,814. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. excuse me, why is this in community development rather than public works?
Director or council?
Yeah, I think that city engineer Alquicira can probably speak to this. I think it was just a matter of urgency. While he's walking up, I'm going to note that the bid tab that was included in board docs, there was a discrepancy on the second page. That has been replaced. I would note that the final changes, that the top line, which was the first page, which included the aggregate bids from both from all the bidders, was correct, and that there was just a discrepancy on the second page in the details. But I'll leave that to the city engineer now.
Good afternoon, council members. So with me, I have Diane Moeller. She's our consultant with Robinson Engineering, and she'll be able to answer your question.
So two things. I have updated bid tabulations with me that I can pass around to the council.
Got 'em.
Oh,
We got
okay.
copies, thank you.
Great. The question was, why is this at this council meeting and not the next one? So.
Why is it in this committee and not the Public Works Committee, was what I asked.
Yeah, okay. And the Public Works Committee is
June
the 17th. So the IEPA has a deadline to receive bid packets by June 14th. And there is no way around that. Based on the schedule, if we waited until February to take on the loan, we had an additional like $2 million in funding. And with the schedule, we had to advertise for 45 days. And then after the advertisement, after the bid opening, May 16th, we were told by the IEPA that they needed the package by the 14th. So.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Roll call, please. Thank you.
Alderman Turner?
Aye.
Alderman Donenworth?
Aye.
Alderman Florian?
Aye.
Alderman Newsome?
Aye.
Chairman Hayes?
Aye, motion passes. Moving on to reports, communications, and information. We have something this time,
Yes, we do.
I believe. Okay, we are going to have a presentation from Sam Green in Planning and Zoning on the Unified Development Ordinance.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Good to see you again. Members of the community, my name is Sam Green. I'm an assistant planner here in the Planning and Zoning Department. Though we are not going to have a vote on the Unified Development Ordinance today, we are going to have a presentation from our consultant team. The Unified Development Ordinance is a modern replacement to our zoning ordinances that will help the city of Waukegan become a progressive city. And when I refer to the term progressive city, it is not in the terms you might initially think of. It is mostly in regard to a city that addresses today's issues with today's solutions. It's one that addresses today's challenging housing market with the kind of developments that residents, developers, and cities all ask for. It's one that addresses our imminent climate impacts with green infrastructure, with carbon reduction initiatives that are sustainable for the long term. And it's one that protects its trees, its historic assets, its natural features to make our city a more pleasant place to be. And Waukegan has the opportunity to join this class and become a progressive city. Planners across the country look to progressive cities for their solutions, which is exactly what this UDO team has done. CMAP, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, kickstarted this project by awarding an application for local technical assistance in 2021. Immediately, they began examining the existing conditions to identify today's issues and to look to other cities for those best practices, today's solutions. The Waukegan team worked with CMAP to ensure that the solutions were the right ones for our city. And as these reviews wrapped up, CMAP handed the project to Sightline Planning and Latent Design, who you're going to hear from today. They used their expertise to clean up the language of the ordinance and to work with the public to understand what this ordinance means for them. And what we are left with, after thousands of hours of reviews and public meetings and workshops and engagement sessions, is a progressive ordinance for the City of Progress. Our CMAP, Latent Design, and Sightline Planning partners are here to present the contents of this document at a detailed level. They are experts in the field, and I encourage you to ask about the policies that are proposed here. All these policies have been proven in other cities, and we are confident that they will bring positive change to the City of Waukegan. And with that, I will hand it over to our consultant team.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and I hope our presentation also comes up, but you should have a printout package there as well. My name is Catherine Darnstadt. I am the founder of Layton. We are an architecture and urban design firm based in Chicago, and as mentioned, we worked with the Sightline team, CMAP, and the really fabulous Waukegan team to develop and bring this United Development Ordinance home for you to review tonight. I'm surprised that everyone here earlier wasn't here to listen to the Unified Development Ordinance, because I know it's so thrilling. But what we could start with, and I know Sam is working through the presentation. We'll have kind of an overview. Some of this you might know, introduce ourselves and our team, talk a little bit about the timeline, and then you might have to go to the next slide manually, I think, unless this remote works. Let's see. Nope. Yeah, you might have to hang out there, Sam. If you go to the next slide, yeah, so we'll talk about, what our process was. We'll overview the Unified Development Ordinance kind of section by section at a high level, and also take questions throughout if you would like that. I know you're on time for another meeting, so I don't want to extend it too far. But if you go to the next slide, you know this Waukegan team that has been working so diligently to answer your questions. If you go to the next slide, you'll see kind of this expansive technical assistance and expert team that comes from CMAP, Layton, and then Sightline, who myself, Catherine, Jake is here, and then from Sightline, and then Louisa's in the back from our Layton team. And we couldn't have done that, if you go to the next slide, without all of the input that we had from the council and all of the alders here today. Those are the one-on-ones. Those are sharing constituent concerns. Those are reading through drafts, coming to all the public meetings. That informed really these last 6 months or so that this team has been working on it, but I know it's been developing it since 2021. If you go to the next slide, and really this plan, Sam really talked about this is a progressive plan, but the old plan is the new plan, right? This is real. Those values are instilled throughout within Waukegan itself. So that plan became the comprehensive plan in 1987, that became a series of various ordinances, that became then the comprehensive land use plan in 2020, and so now all of that gets consolidated together in the Unified Development Ordinance. So that's the long history of where this plan, the planning history of Waukegan is. The short history, if you go to the next slide, really picks up just from 2021 to now. So how did we get to this version that you see in front of you and we're talking about today? As mentioned, it started in 2021 with that first stakeholder focus group to think about how do we modernize planning and the development ordinance. That took through almost a year and a half of draft ordinance, all of those discussions, the feedback, these pieces of information coming from the planning department as a whole, alders, and various other constituents. We've been working on this through late 23 into now, where help pull together engagement meetings, more concise one-on-one, and then working both with council and the Sightline team to go through word by word within the ordinance itself, and then do various pickups and revisions as we came to today, where we're presenting to you as part of the next step to go through approvals at the next meeting and then council adoption. If you go to the next slide, there's been quite a bit of public engagement just within this year alone. Various types of outreach, from newsletters and mailers to public meetings, both open house and in-person conversations, and then also a digital recording. As you know, trying to digest a 350 so page document that expands and encompasses all of Waukegan, we had to find multiple ways to engage people, from business owners to interested residents, and then we also expanded that to provide high-level documentation also in Spanish, as your Spanish-speaking population is growing in Waukegan as well, to make information available to them. If you go to the next slide, how we think about this modernized plan is does a couple things to make it easier for residents and business owners. It streamlines navigation, right? So it puts a lot of the information more clearly in the hands of residents and businesses as they're making decisions on what they want to do to their property or to expand. It simplifies and consolidates. As you saw in that timeline, there was a series on a moment when the comp plan and had a series of ordinances and pieces attached to that makes it messy and overlapping. So this is about consolidation and clarity. Making language consistent. With those various revisions comes the need to make language consistent and make language reflect where these development ideals and progressive ideals are moving forward, whether it's including language about ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or thinking about landscaping requirements, just making sure that's clear and consistent across the whole document. We looked at showing the code more visually. 350 pages of text isn't digestible, so how do we insert more clear diagrams to get intent across? How do we create new matrices to make information more clear? And how does that all start to inform and allow Waukegan to develop this downtown and expand it? That came in as part of those map zoning assignments that we will look at, and also think about how we bring into conformance a whole variety of lots and parcels across Waukegan. This, as I mentioned, it is a modernization. We're going to use that word a lot because there are pieces that we are bringing now into how this living document starts to work moving forward. This is a document that will be revisited over time, but it gets itself a baseline and a structure to think about how Waukegan can grow and develop for years to come and decades to come. And so with that, I will start into the kind of chapter by chapter structure of the ordinance itself. So when we talk about consolidation, we're taking these 5 main components and pulling them together, right? So the Unified Development Ordinance is also the former landscape ordinance. It's the former zoning, it's subdivision, it's all of that pooled together. So just that alone makes clarity of having one document that you could point a resident to, a business to, a developer to look at regulations within Waukegan itself. The next slide will show you how we streamline navigation, going from multiple existing zoning districts to start to consolidate within one typology, or also consolidate other business, office, institutional districts into one zoning category. And that helped organize parcels across Waukegan and also across how development can be executed moving forward. When it comes to showing code more visually, if you go to the next slide, this is where you start to see these graphics start to come up. And this is part of that refinement and the expansion of the clarity of the development ordinance to show what is meant by a dedicated bike lane visually rather than only through text. What is meant by, a landscape ordinance, what is meant by a setback, what is meant by solar panels. All of these things come together, and each section has a series of diagrams that starts to go with it. And that complements the UDO text, the Unified Development Ordinance text. The next slide starts to look through all of the sections that we have within the UDO itself. So we do start with a table of contents, of course, through the document. This is also something that will be now publicly available through PDF, searchable, right? And then also through Muni code. So a part of that accessibility is not only thinking about accessibility of language, diagrams, and information, but how searchable these documents are for a resident or a business owner or developer to review it and do the research themselves too. And then also for other departments to use it. This doesn't sit as a document that's just public facing, it's also internal facing. Because sometimes the other departments might be the first one to hear about a development opportunity or a sign or a new driveway before it gets to zoning. So if they could use it easier, and that means the city works a little bit better as well. If you go to the next slide. We're looking to always simplify and consolidate throughout the document. And if you go to the next slide, this is kind of how we start to think about the structure as a living document. So starting to define the processes and the processes and the roles and application process throughout the document. The next slide will also kind of talk a little bit about the one section in section 3 of the UDO talks about the clear steps now for subdivision processes. So now you do, when we're trying to show this more clearly through that, you now have a step-by-step process and a little bit more illustration and then clear roles and responsibilities laid out for that. So that's thinking at the scale of a development scale, whereas the next slide shows how we're thinking about that scale both at development, but then for smaller projects, whether that's an administrative adjustment, a variance. This becomes another application approval process that allows for the navigation to be streamlined, more clear, and this ultimately helps property owners, it helps business owners, because now they can equip themselves with more information and start to plan their projects and timelines that best benefit them. The next section of the UDO, section 5, talks about planned unit development. So this is about this idea of creating a dense downtown, creating more flexibility for developments or developers to present opportunities to Waukegan, and then thinking about when the planned unit development is triggered, so the size of a type of project or the amount of buildings within a project. So there's, again, more clarity that comes with when that definition and when that timeline and when that process is enacted. Section 6 talks a little bit more about nonconformities, and it's bringing into conformance parcels that were previously non-conforming now are conforming, right? So that's kind of thoughts of how the map amendments, the zoning changes, and the language within the UDO is also defining what work can be approved related to lots and structures, but it's also understanding there's a realization that not every existing parcel is perfect right now, and so finding pathways to allow them to either bring them into conformance or then already conforming, non-conforming items. And this is something that I know for many of the alders up there, they thought about what this meant for their constituents from a residential standpoint or from business owners. It's about creating a way to bring those properties into conformity and not necessarily penalizing those owners or business owners or property owners. Section 7 is thinking about, again, we go back to the subdivision development standards. And this is an item where I know the team works significantly to think about how does the planning code become more modern. So that was, thinking about ways to incentivize a variety of subdivision developments by making more clear what's a walkable block, where are there, how are you connecting to all of the new trail systems that have been developed throughout Waukegan, thinking about conservation of both conservation of open space, and then also pairing that with the engineering design manual that exists within Waukegan. Section 8 this is one that really I think will have the greatest use overall, is thinking about the zoning districts itself. So going from 26 districts, you saw earlier on, I showed all of the different districts side by side and where they were consolidated into, 10 residential into 5, or, 17 business districts into, less. We're going from 26 zoning districts overall into 17. So that helps streamline the process overall. That has also come up with revised bulk standards to reduce minimum lot size, remove floor area ratio, or you might know as FAR, remove some of those requirements. Set lot widths and set front yard setbacks. All of these are little moves that help encourage development by making parcels more attractive for both homeowner and for business development. Overall, you also see an image on the right that shows a snapshot of the new zoning map. and then that will be part of the release UDO. So this will be a map that will be more searchable, more applicable to business and homeowners, and this is a piece that also what we found through conversations with other departments, this is the one thing that they suddenly, this and the next page will be items that they're the most excited about, because this takes that searchability and that information and puts it in the hands of the public, right? So not only will you be able to look up more easily your address and your zoning district, but on the next slide, you'll start to see how that section 9 of uses allows for people to now more clearly understand what they can develop, what they can expand on, what business they can open based on what their zoning classification is. We found that not every business owner comes to planning department first. They might go to business affairs, they might go to licensing, they might go try and get a sign. And so even interdepartmentally, this information is helpful for them to say, well, maybe you have to go here first, or here's a piece of information that you need to know before you even try and open that business. Are you even in the right zoning district? So this helps everyone advise businesses much more clearly and consistently. Overall, so this was a big streamlined attempt by the whole team itself and really from Waukegan to go from 344 uses to 91. That doesn't mean it restricted 200 some businesses. It just made it more clear and categorized them better throughout, and then was able to streamline that then under the new amount of zoning categories that was reduced as well. So it really made it more clear. It also expanded homeowner property rights by more clearly outlining what an ADU is when it's allowed. So that allows for then homeowners to think about, how they want to live, stay, grow, retire in Waukegan, or maybe keep their kids around a little bit longer. For the next slide, it does talk about ADUs, and that's just one example of how the code has, the Unified Development Ordinance has been modernized to allow for that. In 2020, that wasn't there. In 1987, it wasn't there. It has a lot of different names, whether it's a granny flat, in-law unit, or for here, now it's as an accessory dwelling unit. So clearly defining what residential zoning categories that is allowed in for that use, defining the size of it, that it has to clearly be part of secondary to the principal unit, and then also noting that site plan approval, just like any project, would be required for this particular type of project. Moving forward to 10, in any city, even with a city that has great trails, great biking, access to the lake, we still need to think about parking and how people are moving around. And so this was consolidating and simplifying many of the parking requirements by eliminating parking minimums citywide. Right, so that gives a little bit more flexibility to developments to right size all of their parking that might make sense for the site that they're on, for the size of the business, and then also allow for parcels that might be a little bit too small previously because they required more parking, now suddenly become more attractive. It is also encouraging parking lots to be pedestrian friendly and EV ready. As you make more, if you bring more businesses in and people are walking between businesses, we want to think about what that walk looks like. How is it beautiful? How is it also safe? These are all things that tie together both within parking and incorporate some of the state law for EV parking. But if you go to the next slide, it ties in with what our landscape standards will be within Waukegan. And again, that gives more flexibility to right size the landscape standards. It aligns with kind of proportional guidelines for parking lot landscaping, so we don't want this to be an undue burden to business owners, but we do want to think about how we are upgrading overall our streetscapes, our landscapes, and making some of our open space more native, plant ready and friendly by following what's part of the Morton Arboretum tree species list, which is very specific, and it covers this area, so we have the information there, so we should start to utilize that. And then finally, we have a couple more slides. So signage is another area where there was a lot of work done within the team to make language consistent across signage requirements, sign types, sign styles, heights, sizes, all of these things. It clarifies regulations between permanent and temporary signs, so that starts to become understood. It doesn't impact existing signage, so we know there are a lot of sign varieties already. This is something that is looking at how to kind of like clarify and standardize any new signs that come in that are getting licenses or permits to be installed. And, you know, part of that starts to think about, you know, how do every business wants to open, right? So usually businesses that want to open want to have a sign, but sometimes what happens is that that temporary sign of the grand opening maybe stays a little bit too long, and it gets torn, it gets ratty, it gets all of these things. So how do we incentivize going from the temporary to the more permanent sign by making it more clear what signs are allowed, what the right language around the sign style is, and then kind of consistently being able to have this information out for other departments then to share that with business owners that are interested in having a sign on their property. And then finally, I mean, I said it a lot of times, but this really truly is about simplifying and consolidating information. It's about making it more accessible to both the general public and to the city departments as a whole. And it is a document then, as we move forward to the next slide, it's a document that once approved, it will be live. It is a living document that will then be able to be used. Additional recommendations will probably come from the public as well, and then that's something that the Waukegan team will probably be revisiting as they think through future versions of and amendments to this particular document. And then so for Jake or Louisa, did I miss anything in this presentation that you wanted to share before I open it up for questions? Because I know we want to be mindful of time.
Are there any questions from the committee? No questions? All right. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to point out that we all have had several meetings about this. This is, we've had a lot of time to ask questions, and so it's not like we're ignoring the information you gave us. We've been able to ask questions throughout the whole process, and there's been a lot of time committed to answering the questions that we had.
Yeah, and I hope you're starting to see that in this final document, those questions that you've asked have been answered in this document, have been revised, and so those are all things we mean that it's been reviewed, approved, and like put into action within here. And so I think you've been representing your constituents and concerns well throughout this process. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would encourage members of the public to reach out to your alderman, reach out to any one of us if you have questions about the presentation here today or any questions about the UDO. For members of the city council, I would encourage you to ask planning and zoning any questions that you have over the next couple of weeks, so that when we come to council, all questions have at least been run past the Planning and Zoning Department. Our amazing Planning and Zoning Department has been working in this for years, along with their consultants and external colleagues. So the least we can do for them is ask our questions in advance so as not to delay, hopefully passing the UDO, but also so that we can get the best answers possible to our questions. So the short version is ask your questions in advance of the next meeting, and we'll see if we can streamline this process. It is a terrific opportunity for the city to present a hopefully unified front in passing a unified development ordinance. With that, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned at 6:07. Thank you, everyone.